And I just realized that my mic was off the whole time. So let me start over again. This is stream number 7. This is going to be a short stream tonight, and I'm going to focus on some refactoring. And we're looking at the URI component that I've been working on the last 7 or 6 streams. And this is a subcomponent of our web server. And the last stream I did, I added a few methods to the URI, namely normalize path and resolve. Normalize path is to remove dot and dot dot segments from paths, and then resolve is to take a base URI and apply a relative reference to it to get a new URI. And the code that I put in there for both the normalize, if I can find it, if I can type correctly, normalize path here, and then resolve, I think could do with some cleanup. And there's also a medium-sized state machine back here in parse authority that I think could be expressed a little bit better. And I also have these modules, normalize case-insensitive string and percent-encoded character decoder. The code for those is actually in pretty good shape, but I don't have standalone unit tests for them, which I kind of want to have, especially if these modules might migrate to another library. I kind of want to be able to migrate the tests with them. I kind of feel like doing that latter part first, setting up some unit tests to cover these standalone modules. So let me get started with that. I'm going to go to the CMake file for our unit tests for URI here. And I'm going to establish some new unit tests specifically for character set, and actually it's all 3 of these new modules that we added over the course of the last 6 streams. So we're going to add a character set tests, normalize case-insensitive string tests. You can see it just follows the pattern of taking the name of the module and then adding tests to the end. Now we're going to create the files themselves, and I'm going to just copy URI tests just as a model. I'm going to copy it once and then go here and rename everything. I'm going to change this to say module contains unit tests for the character set class. And right now I'm just going to strip this down to say placeholder. I want to set up all 3 of the tests files first, just to have the minimum things in the file to start with. So there's the bare minimum. I'm going to copy that and set the other names. Actually, I'm going to cheat and copy the name and paste it there, and also paste it in here. And then again with this last one, I have to copy the file first, then grab the name, paste the name, add tests, and replace this part of the name. Good. Now I'm going to go back to Visual Studio. I'm going to hit build. I don't really care if it builds completely. I really just want it to rerun CMake for me. Now we should have those new tests, placeholders for those tests. I'm actually looking to see why did I misspell that? Character set. Interesting. Oh, I know why. Because these are private. I think I want to promote them to be in the public API. That will allow me to write the tests and be able to include them without doing any kind of weird trickery. Actually, what kind of weird trickery would I really need to do? I really just need to get the source directory where these headers really are to be in the include path for the unit test. Maybe that's okay to do. So the way we would do that, we would go into the CMake lists here, and I need to add an include directory. So target, see if I remember this off the top of my head, target include, I don't remember it, so let me go look at the other CMake file for the library itself. Target include directories. Target include directories. And it's just going to be for the unit tests themselves. And we want to reach into the source directory of URI. So if we're in tests, they'll be going up one level and then down into source. Okay, that didn't quite work. Oh, hold on. That's because the path is not URI / anymore for those tests. It's just going to be without any path. Okay, I don't really like not having a directory context for that includes. One way I could fix that, I think, in the CMake again, is to just get rid of source and say ... Then I would say, in those tests, I would say source /. Okay, yeah, I think I like that better. So we're going to say, from our tests, we can reference the source directory. As long as we don't make a library called src, then if I read this later, I'll realize, oh, okay, we're including an internal API, which I think is okay because the unit tests go along with the library itself, so I think they should be allowed to reach into the internal APIs. Okay, looking good so far. So let's think about some tests for character set. Now this is different from traditional test-driven development in that we've already written the character set class as part of URI itself. So the tests for it are pretty much built into URI. So I either need to extract those parts of the test, those parts of the URI tests out here, or treat it like legacy code where we've given code that's already been written and we want to bring it into the fold by making unit tests for them. Let me look and see what the URI tests cover, if there's anything specific to character sets. I think what's specific to character sets are the tests we have for illegal characters, such as this. And I think it's a little bit too tied into the URI parsing, so I think what we want to do is make standalone unit tests. So just refamiliarizing myself with these tests, or with the character set, what can we do with it? So we can construct character sets in different ways, and we can check if a character is in a set. So I'm going to follow a general rule that I sometimes use, which is make a test for each public method and constructor, and that ought to be sufficient for a simple class like this. So we'll make one for default constructor, another one for single character constructor, another one for the next one, which is range constructor, and the last one was, or the last constructor was initializer list constructor. And then the contains method. Although I think in order to test these constructors, really the only thing we can do to inspect the class itself is to call the contains. So this might be a bit redundant. That's fine. And So default constructor. We make a URI character set. And essentially we're going to make sure the default constructor does what it's designed to do. And what I have there is that no character is in the set. I kind of want to have a vector of characters. Actually, you know, it would be easy just to we'll just check to make every single ASCII character is not in the set. So for char c equals 0, c less than 80 hex plus plus c, assert false, cs contains c. So normally I would just stop there and say that that's good enough. But if we want to be extra careful, what we can do, first we're going to make sure it builds, is we can actually break the test, make that assert true, and make sure that the test fails to begin with. It fails to begin with, and then switch it back to what should be the correct test. And that, I think, is good enough to verify that we didn't break our test framework, that switching that one line from assert true to false, and that makes the test pass, means that we're doing the right thing, and the component character set class is doing the right thing. So okay, so next is the single character constructor. And for that, it really doesn't matter what character, so I'm just going to pick a random character. And what I'm going to do is take that same loop, and we're going to say if c is the same x character, then we're going to assert true that it's in the set, otherwise false. Range constructor. Range constructor looks like this, like A through, I don't know, G. I don't want to pick F because it's too much like hex digit, and I don't want to pick Z because I don't feel comfortable with the range coincidentally being all capital letters. So the characters that ought to be in the set from A through G inclusive would be anything that's greater than or equal to A and less than or equal to G. Okay, initializer list constructor is a little bit more interesting because it's basically constructing a composite set or a set of sets. So I think what we'll want is several examples. I'm trying to think about the best way to write several examples at once, concisely. Okay, how about we do this? We'll have a vector of test called test vector. Vector of vectors. Say test vector. It's a different kind of vector. It's the parameters for one test. So the parameters for one test will be another vector. I'm trying to think. Should I do it with ranges? That's probably the most flexible. So we can do what we can do is pair of characters to express a range. Ranges. Do we need anything else? Actually, I don't think so. So it's going to look a little bit ugly, so but I can just do that. Let me look at my other unit tests to see what I've been naming that kind of a thing. Oh, I see. So I've just been I haven't been giving it a name at all of the type. I've just been saying that and then that. Right, and then const auto test vector and test vectors. It doesn't like vector because I haven't included the vector header file yet. Let me do that. And I don't think it likes pair either. That's why it's still not happy. I'll look up in the manual here that I have use velocity to hold offline manuals. We'll look up pair, and I just want to see what header file. Okay, so it's utility. You need to include utility to make sure we get pair. Okay, it doesn't like it because I don't have anything in the initializer. So it'll be a vector of pairs. Oh, I forgot another colon there. That's actually the real reason why I didn't like it. So what we're going to do for every vector of pairs is we're going to set up a character set. And actually, I basically want to pass the test vector in. So I really can't use standard vector. What I really want is initializer list, right? Okay, so, yeah, I guess I do need to go back to a structure with two things in it. Struct test vector. Because one of the things is going to have to be the initializer list. And the other one is going to be the matching vector of pairs. Ranges. Oh, an initializer list, I need to include that. I think. No, I'm wrong. Interesting. Do I need to remove the const? But it doesn't. Maybe you can't make an initializer list that stands alone. I guess that makes sense. So we really can't use this kind of pattern. I guess we just have to do it manually for each one. So scrap all that. We'll just do it manually for each one. So we'll make, with initializer syntax, we'll start with a single character. And I'm already thinking that kind of want to make, well, no, it's okay. I could just copy paste this stuff. It's not going to be too bad. So for that kind of character set, CS1, you just do that. So that's a single character initialization. Now let's do a one with two characters in it. A and G. So that's not actually a range one. This is the initializer list constructor. So it's either A or G, but not the characters between. If it's A or G. And that's CS2. 3 will be one with a single range. Let's pick a different range. How about F through I, lowercase. So there we'll get a single range. Oh, and I need to fix up all these. And let's do one with two ranges. A through C. And F through I. So now there'll be 2 ranges. And I just realized that has to be an AND. As well as there. Because the OR is on the outside there. A through C. Okay. Oops, I didn't do that quite right. That's what we want. And then we'll have one that's sort of a mix. So a range and then a single character. That's probably good enough. So we want something that really doesn't depend on any one constructor. Actually, all the ways I can think of it are going to be redundant, so I guess I'll leave it out. Okay, I already had a 4, so let me make it a 5. Why can't it write the unit test? Oh, that's interesting. We have I guess we had an infinite loop in the test before. I think I know why. That 0x80 is larger than what can be in a character. So I gotta be careful with that. We don't have to search all the ASCII characters, so let's just go up to but not including 7F instead of 80. We don't have to be exhaustive, and now I don't have to worry about overflowing the character in the loop there. So test passed. Let me break it just to make sure that the tests aren't broken. Okay. The test is not broken. Okay. Range. Single character. Okay, I think that's good. So there we go. We have standalone tests for character sets, and let me just run a gtest filter to verify that. Character set tests. So we have 4 tests. Probably good enough for that class. So let's do one for normalized case-insensitive string. Trying to remember, do I need a case name and a test name? I guess we always need a case name. Really, I'm only going to have one test. What do I call it? Well, let's look at the header. Why don't we just name it the same thing? It's just without tests. I think what we'll do is we'll just have a bunch of asserts. So something like this. Whoops. Oh, because it needs to be in the URI namespace. So normalized case-insensitive string is taking all the capital letters and making them lowercase. So even if they were all lowercase already, or if they're all uppercase, it should do the same thing. And we should do that with a different a different kind of string. Something like that. So everything beginning with normalize. And let me make sure that the test is fails if I break it. All right. This is such a simple function. Having a single simple test is probably good enough. Right, so last but not least, percent-encoded character test. This is a class that has a constructor, a next encoded character input, check if it's done, get the character out. So let's have one with a good sequence. And we'll have one with a bad sequence. How about sequences? We'll have a couple. So first you have to make the class. PEC. So we're going to, each character we put in that's good, it's going to return true. Next. Oh yeah, it needs to have the URI namespace. Next character, so 41 should get us the letter A out. And along the way, we're going to check that what we think should be true is true. So done should be false until we've put in 2 characters. Right? And then get encoded character, it doesn't really matter what it returns when it's done. So I'm not going to call it until it's done. Let's repeat that for something with a hex character, I guess. And I'm going to do the same thing I do in the rest of my code for this class. I'm going to just reinitialize by calling the constructor and assigning it to our variable again. Let's pick one with a hex character in it. And I need to consult my ASCII table because I don't know this stuff by heart. (5a) is capital Z. And then let's do one with a lowercase. It's a lowercase. Actually, I guess it doesn't matter. How about X? No, I want a lowercase hex digit, so any one of these will do. How about N? So 6, we'll do 6 lowercase e. Should get us lowercase n, right? Okay, some bad sequences. Would be anything that's not a hex digit. How about G? It'll be a false. I think the way I've written this, it will it shift even if it's bad? It'll always shift. It doesn't really matter because at the first false, you're supposed to stop using it. So maybe that's how I'll depict it in the unit test here, is that every bad character will terminate our use of it. G is also bad. Here's actually a good case where I could reduce some redundancy. how would I do that? So I would say something like standard vector of, and let me include vector. Standard vector of a character test vectors. Let's see, for auto test vector and test vectors. And then put that inside the loop or replace that with test vector. All right, so now I can think of a bunch of characters that are not valid, not legal. Probably good enough. I guess we want to do the same thing up here too. Instead of a single character though, could we say 2? I think we can, so then we just say for 1, 5A, 6E, right? Oh, and I want to put the expected result. Okay, so test vector char 2 sequence, and then expected output. Something like this. Right, so now I can put this in a loop, same kind of loop as before. There we go. Then this is test vector sequence 0, sequence 1, expected output. And it should be const. Still doesn't like, I'm missing, where I'm missing a, oh, right there. All right. Let's check that out. Okay, line 31. Oh, okay, so here's the case where I want to put an index. And increment it each time. So I can see which test vector failed. So it's the very first one, as I should have thought. Oh, we get D out for 41? That doesn't sound right. Should have been A. Oh, because they have a 0 and there, so the test was broken. Okay, good. So we already tested breaking that because we broke it by accident. Let me break this one by putting in a good character in the sequence. So now we should get it to fail. All right, so it's probably good enough. We've tested that if anything that's not a hex digit is just not acceptable at all, and ones that are acceptable, it's done after. It's not done at the beginning, it's done after 2 characters, and we get the correct decoded character out. So that's all that we really expect for that class. It's all that we need to write tests for. That's one bit of refactoring, so to speak, that I wanted to do, so let's go check that in. Right, so this is, I'm going to call it refactoring, even though it's not really refactoring. Add unit tests for standalone modules that were formerly part of URI, and so were previously tested along with URI. I don't need to push it right now. Okay, so next thing to refactor, let's close all that stuff. I think we're good on the bodies of all of these small classes. Yeah. So it's all going to be in our main class here. So what do I want to look at first? Just kind of scanning through the file to see what looks like it might be a good candidate for refactoring. Well, originally at the beginning of the stream, I was thinking of refactoring the state machine here, maybe, or the normalized path, or this that parse authority part. No, that was the state machine. So normalized path, the authority part, or this resolve. Let's do this. So a lot of this stuff is common. This block is almost the same as that block, only this has an extra copying of the scheme. But this is a good enough chunk that's in common with this that I feel like we can extract a method. So let's extract a method. We take the code we want to extract, and we're going to put it as a private member, private method of the class. These are all private. Okay, so here's the end of the private methods. Hold on, where was the code we extracted? Was that after all this? I think it was. So we can put it at the end of the implementation structure here. Okay, so this is exclusively operating on a target and a reference. So what we can do is we can pick one of these to be the object that we're working on, and the other one. So I think what we'll do is we'll make target the object we're working on. Relative reference is the one we're passing in. Just trying to think of a name for this. I wonder if we should split it into 3 sections, because that's authority, that's path, and that's query. Maybe if this part is repeated again, that makes sense. Let's look again. It's not okay, here's where it's repeated once. Here's where the authority part is repeated. Okay, so that's good enough for me. So we'll make 3 functions. Copy authority from another URI. Other will be that part. Copy path, copy and normalize path from another one will be that much. And although it's kind of cheesy, I kind of want, for consistency's sake, say copy query, even though it's one line. Make some comments. This method replaces the URI authority with that of another URI. This is the other URI from which to copy the authority. And then we're just going to use that same comment, but use, let's say, path. And we're not just replacing the URI's path, we're replacing the URI's path with that of the normalized form of another URI. Query is a copy paste from authority, only we say query. So we get rid of all the target dots and we replace other with, or reference, relative reference with other. Oh, we don't need the impl either on the left-hand side. Okay, that's going to be a problem. I have an idea of how to solve that without too much work. That's just going to be other. Okay, to solve that, the problem is normalized path right now is a public API method, and this function is a private method. We can just simply push the body of this normalized path public method into the implementation. So let's find where it's declared in the public API. And I'm just going to copy the comment verbatim. Find the body in the public API. And just, we're just going to move it and just forward the call. Looks like I named it normalize. I should call it normalize path. And then one small adjustment is we'll get rid of all the impls, which actually cleans that up a tiny bit. And I know I need to go refactor this function itself. Okay, now we extracted all of this code out from, where was it? From resolve. Now we can replace, actually, we should have this, just for consistency, we should have a copy scheme as well. And I think we want to have a copy fragment. A copy basically for every element. And I'm just putting them in the same order that we've been keeping elements. It was scheme first, fragment last. All right. So this scheme, that's authority, that's path, so this is copying everything. Target impl copy scheme from relative reference. And then path authority path query. Query. All right. And then here it's just these last three. And I think the next one was a path copy. Oh no, there was a query copy there. Oh, here's an interesting one. I need to say, I guess I can say this. Sort of awkward, but it works. Copy normalize path from this. Okay, here's a weird one where we want to copy it but not normalize it. Maybe I just leave that. Well, do I? Maybe not. It's easy enough to, it doesn't cost us much to just have a copy path without normalize. With that of another URI. And actually we can chain these, right? This is the other from which to copy the normalized path. I'm actually wondering if we should make these copy methods public. I think I'll wait until we actually need to do that. It's entirely possible that I'm making mistakes. I'm going to rely on the unit test to tell me if I've made a mistake. This is copy authority from this. This is copy scheme. And finally, copy fragment from relative reference. So let me build that. And then we're going to run all of our tests. I guess I did break something. Probably the easiest way would be to look at the change in Git. I'm guessing I swapped like a relative reference for this at some point. Actually, I didn't. That scheme host user info passport port path and query. Host user info passport port path and query, right? Just the query. Just the query again. Copy and normalize path. Oh, there it is. So that's try to find exactly where that was. Here, right? So it should be relative reference. Yeah. Still bad. So more than one spot I made a mistake. Oh, it's query, not path, right there. Okay, good. So I've extracted methods out of that to make it a little bit less, a little bit smaller. I'm just looking at some of this code to see. Here's something where we might want to extract a method just to make it more readable. Let me do that. So take that code. And let's put it here. Instead of having an if, we'll just return that condition, and then we'll replace the if with if in the name of this function. what is this doing? And we can get rid of this part. This function is path absolute. That's really what this means. This method returns an indication of whether or not the path of the URI is an absolute path. Meaning it begins with a slash / character. And then repeat that because these two paragraphs could end up in different sections of a manual generated by parsing these comments. For example, this could show up as a brief description for this function if in a table of all functions, and this might show up if in the manual you are just looking at, well, okay, maybe my argument is weak, but in my mind, I'm a little repetitive between if the whole point of a function is to return something and then describing the return value, I don't like to just leave this empty, so I basically repeat the point of the function and say it's just returned. Doesn't cost me much to copy paste. Okay, so we're gonna go and find out where that's used. Probably used in a lot of places. So there's one place. Is really that the only place it's used? It's impl is path absolute. Oh, it's relative reference dot. Could have sworn that we had that in other places. I thought we had a method in the public API to figure out if a path was absolute or relative. But now I'm not seeing it. Yeah, it contains relative path. Where is that? Yeah, okay, if it's empty. Alright, because it's slightly different because no, wait a minute. This is actually just the inverse. Right? Yeah, so I think I can just replace that. Return not impl is path absolute. There we go. So we're getting to this in increments. We're getting it a little bit easier to read. This nested messy logic I think is still pretty much necessary because the algorithm from the RFC sort of requires that we have these different conditions. That's just how it is in resolving URIs. Okay. It doesn't look too bad. Oh yeah, we talked about earlier separating these into different functions. Or did I? I think I already did. Yeah, parse fragment, parse query. I'm wondering if this is parse authority. Oh, right. This comment is not strictly correct, is it? It's separate or next, separate the authority from the, is it from the path? Yeah, because we already split off the query and fragment before, right? Or at some point here. Oh no, we're splitting it off at the same time. So separate the authority, path, query, and fragment elements. That's just this part. Actually, the wording is slightly different. Separate the authority and path from the query and or fragment elements. That's just this section of the code. I'm looking to wrap that at 80 characters. Okay, there we go. This, what does this exactly do? This parses the authority if it has one. Well, it's actually splitting the authority from the path and then parsing the authority if there is one. Let me first start with a comment. Split authority from path. If there is an authority, parse it. That's essentially what this code does. And then we parse the path afterwards. We handle special case of putting a slash into the path if it's empty and we have an authority, right? Talked about that last stream. Parse the fragment and the query with the tail call. This part's good. This part, we probably want to extract a method for this. Yeah, let's just do exactly that. So I'm going to take that code here, put it into the implementation near where the other part, if there's another parse, it's normalized path, parse fragment, parse query, parse authority. So maybe after parse authority. Oops, I lost my clipboard. Include the comment because that'll help me keep my mind together, focused on what we're doing, because we need to come up with a name for this. Okay, it's going to return a possible failure. So let's just say, essentially boil down this comment here. Split authority from path and parse it. Right, we can remove the impls because we moved the code from a public method to a private method. Hold on, how come we didn't have an impl in front of that? Oh, we did. I just wasn't watching myself remove it. Okay, so that is not declared, so we need to have that as an argument. And it needs to be mutable, so we'll make a copy. Okay, I believe that is needed upon return, so we're going to move it to be an output variable. And it has some side effects, namely that it's filling in the authority. This method takes the part of an unparsed URI consisting of the authority, if any, followed by the path, and divides it into the authority and path parts. Storing any authority information in the internal state and returning the path part of the input string. 2 arguments. This is basically this part. This is the part of the unparsed blah blah blah. And then the output parameter, path string. This is where to store the path part of the input string. What does it return? An indication of whether or not the given input string was successfully parsed is returned. Because the general failure path is if there's any failure in parsing anything in the URI, we bail out. That looks good to me. So I'm going to search for where that code originally was and essentially just call it. It wants authority and string and path string, and it's going to fill in path string and bail out if it fails. If I reduce this enough, I can actually remove these comments and we'll still be able to read the code. To that effect, I think I do want to make this one a method. This is actually a pure side effect method. And it is fix. Thinking of a name. Ensure path ensure path. No, that's not a good word to use. Set default path if authority present and path empty. It's long, but we're only going to call it from one place, and the name sort of speaks for itself. My goal is that where we call these methods, I can remove the comments, and you should still be able to read the code. Removing impl. It's all. Oh yeah, I need to convert this. This method handles the special case of the URI having an authority, but having an empty path. In this case, it fills the, it sets the path as just a single slash. Now we're going to replace the original code with a call to that. And I don't know how long it's been since I ran my unit test, so I should run that and make sure I didn't break anything. Okay, we're good. So I'm working it to where I can, again, remove all the comments here and collapse the function, the method down. Okay, I don't have anything called parse scheme, right? So, great. Because that's what this, when I was looking at this, that's exactly what this does. And I think I need a, oh, do I need a function for that? I actually don't think I do. So let's just extract the parse scheme. All right. Removing the impl arrows. URI string is our input. I think rest is going to be an output. Make sure I don't mask it like that. And it's going to have a comment that's kind of like this one, so I'm going to copy paste it and then fix it up. This method takes an unparsed URI string and separates out the scheme, if any, and parses it, returning the remainder of the URI of the unparsed URI string, right? Search. I'll leave that comment in there just to explain why we're doing this kind of a thing. Or really, it's this part here. Okay, I think that's good. So down where we use that, or where we got that code from, down here. If not, impl parse authority, or scheme, I mean. URI string and rest. I'm gonna have to move the declaration of rest up. This one right here. So now we can delete that. Now let's see if I delete these comments, is it still readable? I think it will be. Okay, so make a rest. Parse the scheme. Then find the end of the path. Then extract the authority and path string and the query and/or fragment. Does that need to be? That can be const actually now. Then split authority from path and parse it. Then parse the path. Set default path. Okay, that's pretty good actually. Fairly straightforward list of steps, sequence of steps. Okay, all the code here is good, I think. I'm actually pretty happy about how that turned out. Okay, we haven't addressed normalized path yet. Right. Parsing individual. Is this in the correct place? Yeah, okay, this is because this is all the parsing steps. All right, the parse authority needs to be cleaned up a bit. That one actually looks okay to me. And that's pretty much it, right? I think so. I think I've done enough where I have done enough where I want to actually check this in. So we're refactoring, and again, one surefire way of knowing that all you're doing is refactoring is you didn't change any unit tests, only changing the code. The only time that ought to happen in test-driven development is if you're refactoring. Your tests are changing, you're not refactoring. You're either fixing a test or you're adding a test, which means you're changing your specification, your requirements, you're not refactoring. All right, so we refactored extract methods to copy various elements of one URI to another, or from another, really. Right, we push normalize path implementation, or really push normalize path implementation into a private method. Right, we extract hi Synchron, buffering all day. Buffering all day, I'm not sure what you're referring to. Maybe I have a long buffer on my stream. I need to remember to set the low latency mode. I keep forgetting to do that. Okay, I wasn't really extracting a method. I was simplifying and consolidate checks for absolute paths. Oh, I see what you're saying. Synchron, yeah. You're downloading something at the same time. Probably hit the limit of your bandwidth. Okay. Right, this part was a lot of crunching down of the contents of parse from string. So extract individual steps of parse from string and extract methods out of individual steps of parse from string. You're hoping impl doesn't mean implementation? My eyes are rolling. I'm not saying anything. I plead the fifth. Yeah, IMPL underscore, it's somewhat widespread in that if you look it up on Google, a PIMPL, pointer to impl pattern, it's a way in C++ to separate your interface from your implementation. So if you see that in my code, it's something like this parse from string is a public method, and it's reaching into a private member variable or a private method. I know that there are philosophical arguments about this pattern, pointer to impl, doing the separation in the first place and all that. That's a tough one. I don't know if I'm up for a philosophical debate. I'll just say I'll agree with everyone. It's personal preference, right? As long as you can read the code and figure it out, I think that's all that really matters. Okay, these are the methods I extracted out of parse from string. How come this is showing up as all new though? I didn't write all of that. Did I move it? Did it get moved from somewhere else? Yeah, okay. Oh, that's right. I moved it. Okay. think that was it, because this is all different parts of parse from string. Cool. So yeah, once again, this stream tonight, I'm trying to just focus on refactoring, so I'm not writing any new code. My objective is just to clean things up. Oh, nope, no worries, Synachron. Stay as long as you like. This is going to be a short stream anyway. Tomorrow I'm hoping to actually write some new code, but right now I'm just trying to clean things up. Fails match. Like, okay. Yep. Okay. This parse authority state machine here, I need to crack that at some point. Maybe I'm saving it for last. I don't see anything. Oh, it was this normalized path I kind of wanted to see if I could take a shot at. So it's this and then that ugly state machine. So let me see first. If I break this up into parts, what are we doing? Starting a new path, checking if it's absolute. Oh, that looks familiar. We have a method for that, don't we? This path absolute. Can I just... Oh, I mean it's old path. Well, what if I call it before I remove it? What's my opinion on macros? I really don't like them because macros are a part of the C preprocessor, and I really try to minimize use of it because I've seen a lot of horrible code that uses a lot of the C preprocessor. And I guess I've just been burned by it, so I try to really minimize my use of it. In C++, you can do a lot of things now in C++ that were exclusively in the domain of macros. So I kind of favor the newer C++ ways of doing things. Why is a state machine ugly? I might be calling it ugly when it's not, but I'm looking at this. It's this switch statement here. And when I have this many cases and the case numbers are simply states in a state machine, if someone were to say that that's ugly and needs to be simplified and cleaned up, I don't know if I'd be able to argue against it. So I'm just thinking about if there are ways to express what this state machine is trying to do in a better way. Fundamentally, it's what this comment's saying. We're parsing the host and port from the authority and the path, separating those parts. And it gets a little ugly because of the different ways you can express the host name in an IP address or a URL. So that's why we have all these different states. We're parsing it out and we're also validating it. So I don't know if I look at this and if most people were to tell me that that's fine, I might just keep it. If I can't find a way to clean it up, I'll just leave it the way it is for now. Okay. Yeah, I was going to test to see if that works. Okay, it didn't work. Oh. Actually, that was there all along. I didn't see the warning. I always forget to return true and when it falls through. Might help to name the states. That's a good idea, actually. Let me write that in my notebook. Hope you don't mind if I put your name in the notebook. Name the states in the larger state machine. And what's that? Let me know if you don't want me to put your name in the notebook. I'll strike it if you want. This was in parse authority. I just want to write that down real quick so I don't, that doesn't leave my mind but while I'm working on this other part. I saw these warnings. I'm like, I better fix that right away. It's when I split that parts of that one big function to little functions. the fall through path is that there is no problem, and I keep forgetting to return that. Cool, thanks. I'm still getting used to the delay, and I keep forgetting to reduce the delay on my stream, but right now the delay is the default, which is pretty huge, and that's kind of tripping me up on the chat. Yeah, the notebook I'm using is OneNote. I've actually unified it so OneNote looks the same on the Mac as well as Windows. The only thing I don't like is with the latest OneNote, you have to use OneDrive. I don't like it, but it's not terrible. Okay, I'm gonna make sure my unit tests still pass. They are. Okay, good. So that was, I encountered another place where I could simplify a piece of logic there. Now this is constant? Yeah. Okay, right on, Synachron. Okay. I kind of want to break this up a comment right now just because it's long, and as might not need to refactor it, there might just be a lot of white space here. It makes it look long. So this is caching that it's an absolute path or not, starting over. This is actually a little bit of a state machine because it's got a flag that might change mid path. It's not absolute. Okay, so this was, I can extract that right now actually. Can I? Hold on, I'm getting confused. That's right, dot. Oh, right, if the path has more than one element, or it's a relative path. Okay, we already established it's not empty. If it's an absolute path, yeah, we don't want to chop off the special marker, empty string marker that means it's absolute path. Okay, yeah, I can make a method out of this. What we really want to say is if a path is, trying to come up with a good word here. Oh, I know. What we're really trying to say is if we can navigate up a step or not. If you're already at the top and you do ... it's supposed to ignore it. If can navigate path up one level. That's what we want to say. And then this is the block for that. Can navigate path up one level. Return this. We already know that this we can replace with is absolute. Is path absolute? This method, this is the price I pay for refactoring to lots of little methods. My rule about making a comment for each one makes it more, increases the cost, having to write more comments. This method determines whether or not it makes sense to navigate one level up from the current path. In other words, does appending ... to the path actually change the path. That's a good question. You're Synachron, you're asking us this path normalization for files. It could be because this module is all about what does it stand for? Universal resource identifiers. So file paths you can think of as a subset of this. The superset would be it could be either a path in a file system or it could be a path on the internet. I actually have a page here to show that. Uniform resource identifier, not universal. So path on the internet, right? It might say HTTP and then a website and then a path within the website, or you could have like a name, or they have examples not in my notes here, but if I go to the actual RFC that defines URI, they actually talk about paths in a file system. Just really quick. Oh, this won't take long. I promise. I mean, they all start with HTTP colon, but this part's not really this front part HTTP colon / is not really relevant. You could strike that off, and the same rules apply. Or it could be C colon. That might be make it look even more like a file system path, like in Windows. The same rules are applying. It's what do you do when you have dots and dots in the path, and you need to what they call normalize, where you collapse it so that you remove the relative navigation. Yeah, I should describe what I'm doing overall. I'm developing my own web server components in C++, and what makes what I'm doing a little bit different from others is that I'm doing what people usually tell you not to do, which is reinvent the wheel. So there are lots of web server components out there, but I'm just trying to make my own from basically the C++ language and standard library, and that's about it. So I'm hitting all of the internet standards for things that usually people don't bother with because there are lots of libraries out there that do things like URI parsing and generation. Well, I'm writing my own just because. One way to think of it is it's not really important why I'm doing this kind of programming or what it's for. I figure a lot of the people coming to watch the stream are just interested in seeing like the process of writing code in C++. What is test-driven development, for example? Like what are unit tests, that kind of thing. So that's my thoughts. A lot. Do people ask you what auto is a lot? I haven't had a whole lot of streams and viewers yet, so for now, a lot means someone asked me at least once. That list I have for frequently asked questions, maybe I'm stretching it to say frequently at this point. It'll get dropped off the list if something gets more popular of a question. All right, so what are we returning here? But actually, I have been asked about auto at work quite a bit. So I figured it's something people might ask me about. And it leads into what is modern C++ and all that. But I do use the word auto quite a bit, so I figure it's going to get a lot of screen time. Okay. An indication of whether or not this part is returned. Okay, did I actually? Yeah, I did. I did call it. My test still pass. So we'll make some more attempts to make this more readable. What is this doing? At directory level and segment. It's not okay. I know what this means. But I'm not sure how to extract this method. Maybe a comment here will be good enough. Remove last path element if it's not a directory. Directory is not a good word. Well, I'm using directory though in the variable name, so remove last path element if it's not a directory separator. Essentially. Oh, no, it's not remove. It's, oh, I'm getting confused. That's what we were doing here. What we're doing here should be here. And it's not that it's not that if it's not a directory separator. It's remove last path element if we can navigate up a level. You're surprised that I'm writing C++ at work and coworkers unfamiliar with language features. Standard was added in 2011. Yeah, you'd be surprised that a lot of big companies, especially if coders have been there a while, a lot of them don't even like C++ at all. If they think of C++, they're thinking of C++ before 2011. People get stuck in what they know and they get afraid of learning new things. I'm not personally forced to use C++98, but sadly, a lot of people at my work are. I've been pushing really hard to get them to learn the new features. One of the biggest complaints, especially for management, is that they have huge code bases, lots of targets, embedded targets, and they're really uncomfortable trying new compilers, new versions of tools. And they have a lot of, I think, preconceived notions that it's slower or it's not well proven or it'll cause things to become unstable. They have this idea of if it's not broke, don't fix it. So it's actually kind of sad. Yeah, I like auto because before modern C++ version of auto, you had to repeat the names of types a lot. I don't like repetition. Anyway, see, that's what we were doing here. What are we doing here? This is where if it's not dot or dot dot, we're building a new path that has all of the relative elements removed. So non-relative elements can just transfer over fine. The exception is if we're at directory level and the segment's empty. Right. The exception is if we just navigated a relative segment and the next segment is a placeholder for, or this is rambling. I need to rethink that sentence. Type inference can be overused, and when it is, it kind of hinders me. Yeah, I agree. And I have to keep that in my mind when I'm using auto, because like a lot of things, there's a trade-off, right? If you go too far in using something, it's bad, and if you don't use it at all, it can be bad. So it's like striking the right balance. Sorry, did I garble that or screw that up? So I was responding to, yeah, abuse, exactly. if something's abused, if it's used too much. That would be like one end of the spectrum. But if there's a feature of the language that's useful and you never use it, that can also be bad. Let's see, non-relative elements can just transfer over fine. An empty segment marks a transition to a directory level context. If we're already in that context, we don't, we want to ignore it. To ignore the transition. Hopefully that makes sense. Your messages are getting censored? I was wondering about that yesterday. That might be the default settings I have for the auto moderation. I might need to turn that back. All right, you've convinced me to do that. Let me do that right now. Let's go to the auto moderation and tell it that we're all adults, right? Okay. This will just take a moment. Just take a moment. Dashboard. Moderation. Why do I have it on level 4? Should I allow no filtering on profanity? Let's see if that's good enough. Now you can, now you should be able to curse. They have other categories: identity language, sexually explicit language, and aggressive language. I think I'll keep that on for now, but you should be able to say what WTF now. Thanks for pointing that out. See if you can cuss and get away with it now. I'm actually using a standalone Twitch chat thing, which isn't, I don't think it's showing me deleted messages. Let me open the standard one. That hopefully will show me if stuff is getting deleted. All right. This is actually pretty self-describing with the comments. I don't know if I can extract the code out into methods. Maybe it would be good enough to just comment this. Rebuild is really rebuilding. Rebuild the path one segment at a time. Removing relative, what is it? Removing special navigation. Still censoring? Sexual. Okay. Is the F word sexual? Maybe. Let's turn that off then. Sexually explicit, no filtering, save. Try again, I guess. There. Really, it was censoring just WTF, you're not even spelling it out? Okay. Rebuild the path one segment at a time, removing special navigation segments as we go. Really, it's it's applying removing and applying special navigation segments, meaning dot and dot dot as we go. Oh, you got a cuss word in there. That's good. All right. Let's see. This is okay to go here, I think. Do we need this anymore? I don't think this was used by something I extracted, so I don't need it anymore. Hopefully I don't need that anymore. Let me run the tests again. Okay, test still good. All right, thanks, Synchron. Thanks for reviewing. All right. I want to say something about this special if at the end. Right, so if at the end of rebuilding the path, we're in a directory, how do I call it? Directory level context. Add an empty segment to mark this, to mark the fact. That's what empty string segments in our path are. They end up being single forward slashes marking a directory context. I'm going to leave this the way it is for now. That means that really the only thing left for obvious consideration for refactoring is perhaps this state machine, and I think I will take Synchron's advice and at least name these states. So we'll name this one. We'll have a common prefix for this machine. We're looking at it as the host, right? So this is host first character. And put it up here for now. Const expr. Is it size t is the type for decoder state? Yep, size t. Actually, can I just use an enum? That would be the C++ thing to do, wouldn't it? That would be enum class host parsing state. Oh, it's decoder state because it actually used to do percent-encoded character decoding, but it doesn't do it anymore. So it's really just parsing state. I'm gonna leave it all uppercase because that's just how I. Well, is that really? Do I really need that? It feels good for now. So instead, we'll say it's a parsing state, host parsing state, and it's that. Switch host parsing state class. Now we can actually get rid of a comment. Gonna quickly go through and replace all these decoder states with the correct name now. It's not a decoder, it's a host parsing. Now let's give a name for the next one. This was host parsing state. We'll call it. Actually, I can get rid of the word host, can't I? It's not IPv6 or IPv future. That's what it is. And this one's first character. Okay, I thought I chopped that off. But I guess not. Okay, state 2 is host parsing state percent encoded character. Whoops. Okay, my stream is going a bit later than I thought it would. I think what I'll do is I'll wrap up the stream after I get done giving names to all these states. And then we'll continue tomorrow. So get rid of that comment. If it's better to say that or that, I'm just going to leave it at that. Okay, so state 3 is where it is. It is that. Actually, no, it's IP literal. IP literal is a combination of the two, I think. Oh, okay, so that's an even better name for this. Not IP literal. Right? Yeah. Not IP literal. And then there's IP literal. Enum type prefix. Okay, 1 was not IP literal. Three is IP literal, right? 0, 1, 2, yes. Next is 4. 4, we'll name it IPv6 address. And I still need to get back to do this. I've done the research, but it's probably could take at least an hour to do it, so not tonight. Okay, so if it's V, it's IP future 4's IPv6 address, so right. But I thought this would be IPv. Or is it just called IP future? IPv future. Or there. It's 5. Okay, just 6. So 6 is next. Okay, so this is there's different parts of IPv future. So there's IPv future. Why is a dot go to? Did I screw that up? Was that a V? And no, a V is there. Is it really V dot? Where is it? Oh, there really is a dot. It's a hex digit and then a dot. Oh, it's one or more hex digits. So it's IPv future number, the number. Hi, Passepartout. Hope I'm saying that right. You're trying to parse IPv or IP address. Sort of. What I'm doing is I'm writing a component to parse URLs, and I'm kind of referring to the standard syntax. At the very top, you know, you might be familiar with this. Most websites are just a registered host name, but it's one legal thing. There is to have either IPv6 address or a future version of IP with the special syntax. And so to be complete, to parse all kinds of URIs or URLs, I have to handle that case. And I'm mostly parsing it to validate that it's correct. So when I'm returning false, that means it's not matching the pattern and it's not a valid URL. I'm not actually going to do anything if it is valid. A component that's using this class might, though. So what this is doing is, if it's valid, is it's just pushing the characters that make up the address into a string called host. And then the user of this class would just take the host string, probably run it through a utility that connects, makes a connection. Or if it's a host name and not an IP address number, it would be looking up the number from the name using DNS, something like that. But this component's really only concerned about, is it correct, and what parts of the original string go into the different elements, like separating the scheme from the host name, from the query string, and all that. So yeah, right now I'm just doing refactoring. So the code mostly validates everything. I did have one part I hadn't finished, which is IPv6, so I have a to-do, because I'm not too familiar with IPv6. Otherwise, the code works. I'm just refactoring it right now. I have a sort of a state machine, and it had just raw numbers for the different states, and I'm giving them names now, just to make it a little bit easier to read. Did I do that right? I didn't do that right. It's not a new state. It's that one. IPv future number. And the next state after that is, it's really looking for, okay, when it hits a dot, okay, so it's the body. It's the IPv future, the body of the future IP address. Okay, if the grammar is regular, you might want to try re2c.org. Writing state machines like that can also be fun. Yeah, the last sentence is what resonates with me. What I'm about is reinventing the wheel. Most people think that that's kind of a silly thing to do. I actually like figuring things out at the very low level and writing it myself, even if it's already been done before. Probably see a lot in this stream, but hopefully I'll be building myself, building my code up to where we'll be doing interesting things. My goal right now is to build up my own web server. So we're tackling all the low-level components, and then we'll be integrating up to making a real functional web server out of these pieces. But yeah, I'll check it out, definitely. Let me copy that link right now and put it in my notebook. Check out that. I'll do that later. Thank you for the suggestion. The specification for URIs actually talks about parsing with regular expressions. There it is right there in the appendix. Trying to think of a succinct way of expressing what I think about regular expressions. I think they're pretty powerful, and a lot of times too powerful. Some people just get tempted to use them overly much, and the code can be condensed into a regular expression. It becomes almost unreadable to all but like the most adept at regular expressions. I have a good friend of mine hates regular expressions. Whenever I would try to use them, he doesn't like it. So I'm not saying that I'll never use them, but I actually think that URI parsing is relatively simple, and I guess I don't have a really good reason why I didn't use regular expressions at all. It just felt natural to parse it by splitting strings up and checking them. All right, I need to give names for, I think, yeah, I gave a name for this, but I didn't put it in the list. And then where we use it is where 6 is, so that's here. And this last state, right? To check to make sure there's no garbage before we get to the end of the string, right? Because if we hit the end bracket, there better not be any other characters, otherwise it's garbage. So this is like a garbage check. Garbage check. If there is a colon, it's actually not garbage. That's actually where we want to split off the port number from the host, the port number being optional. So we're going to keep the comment in here to say why we're matching a colon and why we actually have another state. I do have, what's that last state for? It's, do I actually need a state for that? I do, because we're the whole machine is one character at a time, so this one's just port. Port. Alrighty. There's another case where we can get into the port state. And 7 was garbage check. We can get to garbage check from here as well. And port here. Yeah, 7 was garbage check. And what did I do here? Did I misspell that? Oh no, I just added number. All right. Hopefully I didn't break anything. Good thing I got unit tests, right? Unit test still passing, so we're good. I think I might start wrapping up the stream for tonight, and I'll be continuing tomorrow, because I did implement the suggestion I got from a listener, which is to name the states of that machine, but otherwise we're leaving the machine as it is. I'm going to continue to consider if there is any way to make this code more condensed and readable. It actually might be okay the way it is. I just need to document this class and put it in the right place. So these are or we just thinking of the right words here. These are the various states for the state machine implemented below to correctly split. It really is the host and split up and validate the URI substring containing the host and potentially a port number as well. All right. And we only use this inside this function, so we're going to make this enum class private to that function. Alrighty, test still passed. Let me check that in. Okay, literally all I did was give names to those states. Oh, I did that too, and I forgot to check this other stuff in. So let me stage, since it's fresh in my mind, I'll stage everything and then unstage things that had nothing to do with the state machine naming stuff. Okay, and we'll say give names to states in host port parsing state machine. And then right here, yeah, those two places, I remember add missing OK return values in extracted methods. Then this one, we extracted, this is the refactoring for normalized path that we did. Extract some of the logic from normalized path into separate methods. namely can navigate path up one level. Actually, that's the only thing we did. Extract can navigate path up one level from normalized path. That's one thing we did. And we're add comments to explain what's going on elsewhere in normalized path. Sort of a weak refactoring step. It's sort of a sign that we probably want to split this up or clean it up a bit more, but right now I'm not sure exactly how I would do that. So for now, as a stopgap, I'm just going to add the comments. Oh, forgot to stage it. Push that upstream. So for me, it's getting a bit late. I'm in Pacific time zone, so it's almost 1:30 in the morning. And tomorrow I was planning to stream for a bit, so I'll probably wrap up this stream and continue tomorrow. So what I'd like to do at the end of the stream is kind of go over what I did and talk about what I'm going to do next. That way, anyone who might be viewing now or watching this video later get an idea if what I'm going to be streaming next is of any interest to them. And I just got a message from Passepartout. When do you usually start streaming? You're from Europe, 10 in the morning. Yeah, I'm in West Coast US, so it's a bit of a time difference. I'll probably be streaming no later than now, more like, see if it's 10 in the morning for you. I have a world clock. This will help me look at it. I don't have it set up. So for me, Pacific time, usually from 8 p.m. or 10 p.m. up to midnight here. So that's going to be very early morning for you, unfortunately. So I apologize for that. About the time difference, I do archive my videos on YouTube, and there's two benefits for that. If something's not interesting, you can skip it. You can look at the title to see if what I'm talking during that day might be interesting, then you can check it out then. I literally just started streaming in the last month. This is the 7th broadcast, so I'm very new at this, and so my schedule really isn't solidly figured out. I'm also kind of transitioning from a job. Right now I'm working full-time, and this is after hours. When I transition out of that job, this might become more full-time with a more steady schedule. So, what did I do today? This was really intended to be just for a couple hours since the stream started pretty late. And I just wanted to do some refactoring because I didn't think I would get into much else. And I did feel like I got a bunch of refactoring done. And I did get some ideas from listeners and some stuff to check out, which is really cool. Thank you for that, guys. What I'm hoping to do next, I have a set of plans here in my notebook. And by the way, this notebook, if you look below on my Twitch channel, there's a link to it. It's publicly viewable. I have short, medium, and long-term plans. So short-term is to finish this component that I've now gone like 15 hours into. And let's see, actually, I have done some of this, so I can cross it off. I've implemented that. I've added that. So really all we have left to do, actually I'll consider that done. We just did our best at that. Really the only thing I have left to do, two things, because I forgot one, which is IPv6 address validation. IPv6 address validation, and then generating strings from URI objects, which is the inverse of all that parsing. It's going to be a lot simpler because we don't need to do validation. It's pretty straightforward to generate strings when you have all the pieces. Finishing up URI, the next thing I'm going to look at is internet message, which is the name I've given for parsing two different things: HTTP requests and responses and emails. Both use the same format, and it's in a different RFC that we'll be looking at. You might have seen such a thing if you look at the raw contents of an email or in the debugger for your web browser. It's headers and then body. This is going to be a central component to the web server and any web client stuff I do, because generating requests and responses is going to be basically generating instances of this class. So that's going to be important. And then I'm going to make a component to deal with Unicode so that we can be nice and friendly with international character sets. And that's technically a requirement for web servers and for internet message and other things. Just a good idea to support UTF-8 in general. That's all in the short term. Medium term, I need to bring in this component I wrote in a previous project, which has a lot of convenient utilities for network messaging, file access, directory monitoring, subprocesses, etc. And that's going to help form the building blocks for writing code that's going to interact with the network. And I'm going to treat it as legacy code, meaning there aren't any unit tests. I'm going to establish the unit tests and do a lot of refactoring. Otherwise, the utility stuff works and is done. I don't really need to run any new code. But using that, I should have enough pieces to actually make a real web server. And I hope to actually deploy it live so that my listeners can interact with it, hopefully break it in interesting ways, hack it, embarrass me. You know, I say, guys, go for it. It'll be a learning experience for me. I just will make sure that no one's personal information is in there. It's just going to be a sandbox. After I have a real web server going, I want to add dynamic stuff to it. So I want to be able to write plugins for the web server to respond to requests like API requests. And along with that, WebSockets, which are really useful for doing bidirectional communication, like in a chat room, where the web server is representing the room, and then each individual client has a WebSocket connection to that room, and messages are flowing in both directions. WebSocket is yet another internet standard we'll be implementing. So with all that said, what am I doing all this for? Well, in the long term, I had two ideas, and I added a third. The two ideas I had: make a Twitch bot, and then ditch WordPress and replace it with my own blog system. Because once I have a web server with easily plug-inable modules, I can do the same thing that something like WordPress does, but do it by myself and have full control over everything. I added this third thing in here: support secure connections, because that's important and I don't know enough about it, and I think we'll need to do it. Is my code on GitHub or something? It's on Bitbucket. Right now it's in private repositories. I still haven't really decided if I want to open up my code for everyone to see. I probably will, but I need to think about it, because I'm really used to doing proprietary software. That's my job, and I think I just need some time to warm up to putting my code out there and letting people get a hold of it. So anyway, those are my plans, short, medium, and long term. So if you're viewing this live or later in a video, you get an idea if this might be interesting to you or not. And if it's already been recorded, maybe it gives you an idea of where you can jump to for the parts that are interesting to you. And after this streaming, I'm going to go back into this history tab and write down in retrospective what I think happened, what worked well and what didn't work well. And right before I stream next time, I'll be adding a page for the next streaming session. And that's pretty much it. Hoping to get into a cadence, a rhythm where I have the stream set up, executed, and wrapped up the same way every time. And I want to thank you guys for watching, and I hope this was interesting. If it wasn't, that's fine too. There's a lot of variety on Twitch. I'm actually pretty excited that I can have any kind of community interaction. I thought about doing this years ago, before there was a creative community in Twitch and it was just all gaming. When I saw that the creative community started springing up, I'm like, that's exactly what I wanted to do, because it's really valuable for me to get interaction from other people. They tell me when I'm doing things wrong or they have questions, and I like giving back by answering questions. Even if I don't always know the right answer, it's fun to interact and we all learn something from each other. So thanks again. If you're coming in just now, I apologize. I'm wrapping up the stream, but I'll be streaming tomorrow. And that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and have a good day, good evening, good morning, wherever you happen to be. See you soon.